everyone, and welcome in. It is Super Bowl Sunday. That's right, February 7th, 2021. The regular season has come to an end. The playoffs have come to an end. And after tonight, the 2020-2021 NFL season will be officially over. So, as we are most Sundays and just about every day throughout the week, we're sitting here talking with Kyle and Braden. Fellas, we've made it here. It's quite the accomplishment that the NFL has gotten to this point without having to cancel or push back the game. How are we feeling today on Super Sunday?
Personally, I wish I could have tried to sneak onto the plane. It's a little cold here. I don't like the single digits, so but COVID issues made that a little tougher. But yeah, I'm just excited it's finally here, and like we said all week, it's hopefully going to be a game that'll be as good as we're hyping it up to be.
So whenever someone says single digits, I always got to look it up. Yeah, minus 17 Celsius. That's okay. That's cold. I mean, that is what it is, though. But yeah, up in Canada, I mean, Super Bowl is always a big part of Canada media-wise. I know, like maybe not necessarily the regular season isn't as hype, but I mean, here everyone talks about the Super Bowl just as much as I expect it happens in the States, maybe not quite, but I know I'm obviously here to talk about it a lot, and I'm just super excited. I think talking to both of you a lot this week, I feel like I'm talking to you more than almost everyone. Most family members I haven't talked to that much this week. So talk about all the hard work. I know both of you have been doing a lot of podcasts, a lot of articles, so shout out there. Full Press coverage is bound full of content, and a lot of it is directly due to you two, so I think a good shout out there. But I think you've kind of convinced me on like the magnitude of this. Probably might be the best quarterback matchup we've ever seen, and so I just want to enjoy this. I don't have anyone to root for. It's almost, I mean, if the Packers were in, I'd obviously be much more stressed, and so maybe the downside of that depressing loss and how awful I felt 2 weeks ago. Now I can just enjoy this, no stress at all, and relax, and it's great.
Yeah, it's weird for me, obviously. People know me. I am a Patriots fan. I've never shied away from that. I mean, if actually you can't really see it, but on my wall there's a photo of Gillette Stadium, so it kind of, it's obvious that I'm a Patriots fan, but big Brady fan as well. So my rooting interest is very clear. Once again, I'm wearing a TB12 t-shirt. Come on, people. I mean, I'm trying to be as transparent as possible to all of you where my allegiance lands. But so there's this side of it where there is stress, but knowing that even if they lose, it wasn't the Patriots losing. There's kind of a little bit of a solace. There's something to hang my hat on there, I guess, if they do lose. Or I say this now, but when the time comes to get the game going, I'm going to want to see number 7 more than anything. And by that, I mean, obviously, Tom Brady's seventh Super Bowl championship. So we got a long... Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant the 7 touchdowns that either Brady or Mahomes will throw to break the all-time record.
Well, that's going to happen, too. It's going to be very poetic. I mean, Tom's going to throw 7 touchdowns on way to 7 Super Bowls. And, it's in his first of 7 remaining seasons. So that would be 6 more years after this, folks. So get ready. Get used to it. No, look, I joke about it. But in reality, I'm more convinced that maybe 50 is the real number he's shooting for and not so much 45. Well, we know it's not 45 now. He's been very clear over the last several weeks that he intends, if everything continues to go the way things going, he intends to play past 45, which will be at least after next season. So, but we're not worried about the next couple of seasons. Mr. Super Bowl is, well, he's in the Super Bowl today. In just a couple hours, he'll be going up against who many consider the best, certainly the best young quarterback in this game today, and certainly one who has all the opportunity right now to try to approach what Tom Brady has accomplished in his career. It's going to be a while. We're not sitting here saying that it can never happen, because if I sit here and say it's impossible for someone to outdo what Tom Brady did, well, I'd be a hypocrite, because my biggest thing is, well, you can't predict the future. I don't know the future. Who knows? I mean, look, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, they could win the next 10 straight Super Bowls, and you know what? What am I going to say? I'm not going to say anything because it would be silly to try to argue against that. The reality of it is that's probably not going to happen, but it doesn't mean he cannot forge ultimately a better career than Tom Brady. Are the odds against him? Absolutely. That doesn't mean it's impossible. So today there's a lot of great storylines in this game. There are a lot of great just cause and effect. What happens if Tom wins his 7th? How does that impact not only his legacy, but Mahomes' attempt to pass him? Because now we're talking about, well, 2 playoff losses have come to Tom Brady on the 2 biggest possible stages you could have faced Tom Brady in that time. If Mahomes wins, does it hurt Tom Brady? I don't think so, but it's a necessary step for Mahomes to take if one day, not today, not tomorrow, even if he wins, if one day he wants to overcome what Tom Brady has done for himself. So again, the storylines, they write themselves, and we haven't even talked about, I mean, the plethora of talent across the board. And for the most part, aside from the Chiefs' offensive line, I think we're getting a pretty healthy Super Bowl.
Yeah, seeing Sammy Watkins back, I think, is going to be huge for the Chiefs' offense just because he's kind of that guy where I think, especially on crucial downs, 3rd down, need a throw just at the sticks or just past it. He's kind of been that security blanket even more than Kelsey on some downs as far as, that term goes. It'll be interesting to see the 2 former Steelers, for me personally, Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. Don't know how much they're going to play, but just the fact that they're in the big game now and it's not with Pittsburgh, that's kind of funny to me. So hopefully they'll get a little bit of chances to make some plays out there.
Apparently, just knowing people who are Steelers fans or live in Pittsburgh and hear Steelers radio, apparently the thinking there is they'd much rather see Bell win as like a part-time role in the Chiefs offense as maybe the 3rd running back than if Antonio Brown's out there catching passes from Brady and wins a Super Bowl, because I think that would just crush the city of Pittsburgh. So I think most of the state of Pennsylvania is probably with the Chiefs on this one, just as a quick insight there. As for injuries, just real quick, Ian, Cameron Brate, I know there was talk that, the late addition to the injury report, any news on confirmation on him?
It seems like right now he's going to be good to go. The injury again. I mean, this is Super Bowl, so a lot of these guys are going to play through maybe some things that might, knock them out in a regular season game. For example, Jordan White had torn shoulder labrum. He's going to have surgery at the end of this year, but you know what? I think you can suck it up for one game. Especially when that game's the Super Bowl. So, are there injuries out there? Sure. I mean, let's talk about a potentially pretty major injury, and that's Patrick Mahomes, who we heard today, and I don't know how much how new this news is, and Braden can perhaps fill us in on this, but he's going to have surgery likely on his turf toe injury, which will eventually keep him out several months. So, how that has an impact today remains to be seen. But that's something to monitor because, maybe one bad cut, one bad tackle, one bad roll-up triggers that injury, and then that could be a storyline moving forward throughout this game. So going into the game, I think, again, save for the Chiefs' offensive line, obviously missing their left tackle and both tackles since the start of the season now, it's a fairly healthy game. Again, that's going into it. Injuries can certainly play a factor throughout the game, throughout the course. But, this is what we could have hoped for, coming into the week. Everyone's going to be on the field. And to your point about the 2 former Steelers, I agree. I think it would hurt them more, not only from a, Antonio Brown having a bigger role aspect, but again, like you said, it's the former Patriot quarterback. It's Tom Brady, a player that likely cost them, certainly from 2000 to 2010, several opportunities at Super Bowls. That's the guy they don't want to see keep winning. And to have Antonio Brown, who I think could play a very big role in this game, have a big hand in that, I think that would be quite devastating for them, and sign me up for it. Sorry, Steelers fans, if there are any out there watching. I am all for the Steelers' misery here.
But just to stick on Bucks receivers, the reason I was asking about Cameron Brate, Wondering how much of a chance, this is, again, just more for my purposes than anything, but Anthony Auclair, the Canadian, I wonder the chances if he's active. I know he was inactive for the NFC Championship game, but he has been active throughout the season. More of a blocker, but I do wonder if Brate was out, if he maybe had a chance to even catch a pass, would be pretty huge for him in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly, I mean, these are the games we talk about all the stars, but it's always the last guy on that list of weapons that generally makes the difference. And maybe he is the guy. I haven't seen if he's going to be active or not, so I can't tell you exactly. But I do know Cameron Brate has started to become a bigger factor in a limited role. Obviously, he's not going to go out there and catch 10 passes a game, but he's a guy who can catch a big, crucial third down pass that, you know, maybe when you're paying attention to Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Scotty Miller, and Antonio Brown, and Rob Gronkowski, maybe you forget about Cameron Brate, who just kind of trickles, underneath all the defense. So it'll be interesting to see, again, how that injury plays out. If I'm a betting man, Kyle, I'm going to say your fellow Canuck will not catch a pass this game, unfortunately. I'll be rooting for it, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's a line. If half a reception is the line, I'd be, as much as I would love to, I'd love to throw a little bit on that just to, in case it happened, have that little extra. But yeah, I wouldn't advise people to go after that bet line.
No, not at all. So I got to ask you guys real quick before we really get into some of the X's and O's, I guess, of this game and some of our favorite players, which we're gonna list. Last night they officially announced the Hall of Fame class of 2021, and you know there's certainly some guarantees when we saw that the finalists come out. Peyton Manning, again, I mean, even I, as someone who's an anti-Manning guy because of me being a Patriots fan, I still respect and understand that he had a great career, and I rank him as probably the third best quarterback I've ever seen or of all time. So he got in. No one's going to argue. No one's going to be surprised that he got the call. Charles Woodson, former Packer, former Raider, former Michigan Wolverine with Mr. Super Bowl himself, Tom Brady. I don't think there was much surprise there. I think we all expected that. It was nice, like Kyle said before we got on the air, that Alan Faneca got in. John Lynch, in his 8th year, finally got in. And Calvin Johnson. And we're talking about the modern era class because, again, don't want to forget Tom Flores, Bill Nunn. Calvin Johnson. This was interesting to me because I don't think he's undeserving of a Hall of Fame spot. I was just surprised it was on the first ballot. Something we've seen happen. I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me, but the number of first ballot Hall of Famers who have gotten in first ballot over the last 10 or 15 years has skyrocketed from what it used to be, and I think that's unfortunately leaving guys out like Clay Matthews and others that perhaps deserve another chance but won't get it because, well, not to take anything away. Again, this isn't to take away from Calvin Johnson, but they're getting elevated a little too quickly, in my opinion. So other than that, it's a pretty solid class. I would have liked to see Richard Seymour get in personally. Again, other guys, older guys that aren't so, there's not as many highlights out there on YouTube on them because they played so long ago. There's some other guys out there that deserve to get in. What do you guys think? What are your thoughts on just the class in general, and if you have any major problem with it?
I guess just like as far as the Calvin Johnson thing goes, I honestly think they do like their own group of class when they're making these lists. To what I think social media, how they'll respond. I think maybe they thought Calvin Johnson, if he's not in on the first ballot, you're going to get a lot of people complaining more than not. So I could see them just thinking that way. And then also with the Tom Flores factor, you see these commercials that he's on now, and all the years that people have been advocating for him. So I think it's almost like they just kind of choose at their own time who gets in more now than they used to. But yeah, I mean, it's awesome to see some of these names. Charles Woodson, probably one of my favorite defensive players of all time. John Lynch, like you said, I mean, it took 8 years. Very deserving. So congratulations to all the players. And for the most part, yeah, I don't really have any major issues with it at all.
Yeah, I think that the Calvin Johnson. I think you touched on it perfectly, Ian. There have been more first ballot Hall of Famers than ever before recently, and there have been a lot of guys where I've been like, "Oh, really? Are you sure?" And I get that same feeling with Johnson. Like, okay, I get it, but really, so I really have no problem with it because it seems like it falls in line to what their threshold has been. It is kind of strange though. I'm still looking, 2-3 years ago, To how he had to wait not just 1 year but 2 years. That almost seemed personal, and I kind of gives credence to what you're saying, Braden. Like the media, they'll choose it themselves, right? And I think maybe Calvin Johnson's endeared himself with the media. Like the media paints him almost as a victim of the Lions' incompetence, which I mean I talk about all the time in the Packers pod. What an awful organization, right? I feel so bad that he had to play his whole career there. I wonder if that like almost is a sympathy thing. Like, well, okay, well at least give him, to succeed the way he did on that team. You almost think, oh man, what he could have been with great quarterbacks like T.O. and Moss and Rice, right? Like you can think about the quarterbacks that those guys played with. Um, Actually, I'm thinking, did Moss really have that many good quarterbacks? Some. I mean, Brady 1 year, like the limited time with Brady, obviously, but for most of his career, it wasn't that great. But
I mean,
for Johnson,
it was still better than Johnson though, because at least Dante Culpepper.
The time with Stafford was nice.
I mean, yeah, the time with Stafford was nice, but like at least Dante Culpepper was a pretty good quarterback. I mean, I'm not trying to say he was one of the top quarterbacks in the league, but at the time, I mean, a lot of people, maybe the younger crowd, don't remember. I mean, he was a damn good quarterback for. I mean, he had an arm. I mean, that guy could throw a ball. I mean, talk about throwing a ball over the mountains. That guy could throw a ball over the mountain. And hey, why do you think the Dolphins chose him over Drew Brees?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Sorry, I know that's a bad memory.
No, well, and it's actually funny to talk about Brees because I do want to circle back to the idea of Peyton Manning, how easy it was as a first ballot guy, like 5 seconds. I'm sure that wasn't even a discussion. I was sure that name came up on the list. Okay, all in favor, and everyone put their hand up. Like that was. I'm at as much as I criticize Brees. I get the feeling he's probably going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, and I don't really have a problem with it. That's probably the nicest thing I'm ever going to say about Brees right now. So with that in mind, like it wasn't even a discussion that like Woodson and Manning were both going to be first ballot guys. Like the two of the greatest, they're both probably top 5 all time at both their positions. And quarterback and cornerback are probably two of the top 5 most important positions in football when you think about it. Certainly quarterbacks at the top of the list, but I think corners definitely got to be up there. If you think, corners, wide receivers, offensive line, like edge rushers, like those are probably the most key positions. So two guys that excelled like that, no question. Flores, it's been a long time. He should have got in so much longer ago, to be honest. So it's good to see him finally get in. I mentioned Faneca waited what? I think Faneca and Owens were the same year, so he's waited maybe 5 years, which that seems like too long because he does seem like one of the best all-time offensive linemen. But yeah, Flores.
On the flip side, you have a guy like Willie Anderson from the Bengals who is still not gotten in and barely pushed the final. So again, sometimes it's about. I mean, again, it's tough. It's tough to explain why sometimes when one guy gets in over the other, because you talk to some people, and they call Willie Anderson the best tackle, the right tackle, but since he played the right side, he doesn't get the praise that the quote unquote blind side gets. So sorry, I had to throw that in there.
Which I think they've kind of, and recently I think the NFL writers have kind of come around to that. Like just the fact that the all-pro lists now you vote right tackle, right guard, which is how Mitchell Schwartz has been getting on those all-pro lists, which circles back to how much it's going to be a factor to miss him. And I mean, really, it hurts to Eric Fisher, but I think to be without Schwartz, because it doesn't, like both edge rushers are so good that you want both. Right. So I think Schwartz is the one that's really going to hurt them, because I think that right side is where Barrett was coming off a lot of the times. Like that's going to be really scary. I'm guessing maybe I'm hinting at something later. Sorry, I'll let Ian host. But just to touch on Flores, so the last quote I'll say about this, I think it was John Lobb, quite an intelligent man when it comes to football, fantasy football as well, but football in general. And he said, "You don't win 2 Super Bowls by accident. You just don't." And for his legacy, everything he's done, for him to wait this long is almost an insult. But again, I'm glad he's still alive to see it. Unlike, like Ken Stabler, how long he had to wait, and then they put him in the year after he died, or, hockey, go with Pat Burns, right? How long he had to wait, and then ended up, a posthumous induction. So glad to see Flores know that he gets in while he's still alive. That's great.
And I agree with what you say. And to your point about Drew Brees, do I believe he'll get in for absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind he'll be, ticker tape parade, throwing the roses, all that stuff on its way to first ballot Hall of Fame election. There's no doubt in my mind. Now, if you ask me whether or not I think it should be, well, that's a different question and perhaps a discussion for another day. And I'm thinking Kyle might want to participate in that discussion. But again, to me, there's no doubt in my mind the way he is covered, the way he is, and on his play. I mean, I'm not taking away the fact that he's been able to accumulate all these numbers and be relatively successful. But I think you can make a pretty strong case that he's probably not a first. He may not be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But again, that's a discussion for another day, because as Kyle so eloquently started to do, he transitioned us over to the actual game that we have today, and that's Super Bowl 55. And I'm glad you did start to bring that up, because I think the more I think about this, and I credit Braden, I keep doing this every time I bring it up, that 17 snaps together as a group, this offensive line, against not just a defensive line, but perhaps the best in the league. And maybe it's not quite on the level of what the 49ers had last year. They're certainly playing at a very high level right now. So to me, I just keep coming back to that and thinking this offense can be limited if they can take advantage of the inexperience together as a group.
Yeah, I think if there's anything that's maybe good for the Chiefs is, as Kyle kind of touched on earlier with Schwartz being out so long, they have had to play with backups for quite a while. So I think they're probably more comfortable than they maybe are being made out to be. But I think the X factor for me on the offensive line is Stephen Wisniewski. He played pretty good in the Super Bowl for him last year. Went to Pittsburgh, came back off on the practice squad first after they waived him. So he's kind of a guy that's always been used as a depth piece, but when he's played, he's been a force up front with his physicality. So, but missing both tackles, I think that for the most part, Remmers and Wiley have played pretty well. And it's funny how much around Kansas City, the offensive line's been praised actually for their playoff play, because this was probably one of the worst years I can remember them being under Andy Reid, especially with Mahomes. So, but the only thing is, like you said, this is just a deep defensive line. I think of Vita Vea being back, and something we've talked about throughout the week. It's just, he's such a unique player because at defensive tackle, even if he's not getting sacks or pressures, he's taking up so much attention that other guys are getting free shots on the quarterback, kind of like Aaron Donald to a degree with what he does with the Rams. So Vita Vea being back, I think, is the biggest thing for Tampa Bay in this game, as well as Pierre-Paul and Shaq Barrett have been playing. But Shaq Barrett's a guy I think that is definitely going to be a tough matchup for the Chiefs, with his prowess being more as a speed rusher personally. So as good as Pierre-Paul is, I think Barrett and Vea are the two biggest guys that they have to try to slow down.
And I got to say, with regards, I just want to bring it back to Canadian again, but even you think about the Chiefs, the Natal Ziff was going to make good money on this team. They had invested, so they didn't have that money available in free agency to get more players. The price they did is quite amazing and quite spectacular. And it's unfortunate that he went down so early in the season too, because he was playing so well. But really, this whole idea of this offensive line in flux started before the season even started, when Dana opted out to go help with COVID, specifically in Quebec. So which has been one of the more densely hit places in Canada. So it's certainly obviously for a good cause. And I just wanted to shout him out. I know the Lou Marsh Award, I'm not sure if either you are aware of that, but Canadian Athlete of the Year, they gave it to him and Alphonso Davis, which again, I know in North America we don't see winning the Champions League as a 19-year-old playing significantly like that is kind of a big deal, but globally that's such a huge thing, and I think that's really what that is. But I just want to talk about Canada more. I'm sorry, this is the Super Bowl. It's all the red that Braden has. It's all getting me in a patriotic mood.
It's okay. I'm staring at the color scheme of this Super Bowl, and it's very Miami Dolphins, which hey. It's not Miami playing in this game, and but it is in Florida. And look, I want to ask you guys, how much of a factor is home field going to be? Now, we all understand that it's not traditional home field for so many reasons. COVID at the very top of that list. Even if it were a normal season, we know Super Bowls become very corporate. A lot of corporate tickets, a lot of, people, a who's who groups going to these games, and then a smattering of fans throughout. Of course, having it be in Tampa Bay, there would likely be a little bit more Tampa folks in the area going to the game. But at the end of the day, how much do you see playing at home as an advantage or even a disadvantage for the Buccaneers?
I think it depends which team you ask, to be honest. Sports psychology dictates whatever your situation is the best. So for the Bucs, they're embracing the fact that they get to wake up in their own homes today, that their like day-to-day routine, see your family is all there. For the Chiefs, maybe you're embracing the fact that it's another road trip. It's like we've had these home games up in the playoffs, but maybe the idea of get back to a good road trip to kind of get us off our game, get out of that groove and just kind of maybe more think on your toes. So I think both teams are thinking that they have the edge in that sense, especially if they have good sports psychologists with those organizations, which I assume they do. That everything's always positive no matter what, and everything's always an advantage.
Hopefully his last name isn't Easter Bay, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think just with the Chiefs, as far as just the road trip goes, it's pretty normal to what they had in the regular season, traveling on a Saturday and just getting there the day before. So you didn't have to have a lot of distractions down there like they were last year, in Miami for a full week. So I think as far as that goes, normal with what they've had this season. So I think they'll feel comfortable. But kind of like Kyle said, I think both teams, if you ask them, I think they're going to feel pretty good either way.
Now, both teams basically have an opposite way of getting to this game. The Chiefs have been literally sitting at home for the last month and a half, and the Buccaneers have been on the road for the last month and a half, including, if you want to include some of their last games of the regular season. I wonder if something tells me that it's going to affect, and this is such a minor thing. I don't think this is, to me, I think this benefits the Buccaneers more, because for them, again, they've been traveling. They've been dealing with these off schedules. Now they've had the advantage of sitting here at home. We talked about it on some show that we did together over the last week. Tom Brady's been sitting on Mr. Super Bowl. I'm going to keep saying that. Mr. Super Bowl, that's his nickname. Has been sitting home for 12 days by himself in his house studying football. And I know people, what? No, I actually legitimately think that he has done nothing but study football and tweet random funny things every so often. That's all he's done. So, to me, I think this Buccaneers team, they've been traveling, they've been on the edge. Coming home is a break for them. Whereas, maybe after sitting home for a month and a half, traveling for the first time away from your home could lead to maybe a slower start, maybe a little sluggish start. And again, we're talking about, splitting hairs here, but a slow start could be the difference between winning and losing this game for both of these teams. So, maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe we've had 2 weeks to think about this game. Maybe we have more time to fill in the show, so we just have to figure every little detail out. Am I making any sense at all? Anyone?
Which are the teams arriving at the stadium at the same time? Like, are the Chiefs getting there first because they're the traveling road team, and the Buccaneers? I mean, does that mean the Chiefs are up earlier, or do the or is it?
If we're gonna get down to that much detail,
are the Bucs players being woken up by their children this morning?
Well, again, Tom Brady's been home by himself.
Well, it's not just Tom, though. This is a whole team. I have no doubts in my mind that Tom Brady is going to be ready to play this, but how many other Bucs players have played the Super Bowl?
Well, JP.
Other than, I think JPP, is that it?
Yeah. Gronk.
Gronk.
Oh, Gronk. Yeah, of course.
I can't think of really any others off the top of my head.
I mean, three guys compared to a good chunk of the KC roster won a Super Bowl last year. So you got to. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but I honestly, to be
I
honest,
think you're right, Ian, that this probably doesn't matter. I think both of these teams are so focused that they're not going to let those things be the difference. I think no one's going to be too distracted. Everyone's going to be ready to focus. I think the guys that won last year know what it takes, and the guys that have never played in a Super Bowl, this is their dream come true. So you got to think they're going to be ready to play.
yeah, and look, I think I don't put too much stock into it. I think I put more value in. I don't take away. Let's put it this way: I don't take away anything for not playing in a Super Bowl. I do give guys like Brady, who have obviously been Mr. Super Bowl. This is his 10th time. I give that as a little bit of an edge to a guy because I think that experience does matter in these situations, especially at a position as important as quarterback. And again, that conversely to Patrick Mahomes, he's already played in a Super Bowl. But so to me, because look at the Eagles, they're going up against a team that obviously had a ton of Super Bowl experience, having won 2 of the last 3, and they came in and they beat that team with very little experience aside from a couple of guys here and there, Chris Long being one of them, LeGarrette Blount, both former Patriots. So I don't put too much stock in that for teams individually. Players, yes, I think Brady's experience is going to matter throughout the game. Maybe not in our specific situation, but in situations over the course of the entire game. And I think that's ultimately where that experience advantage comes from.
And to be fair, Brady's kind of got that aura where he might calm the rest of the team down. Even those guys that are a little nervous, just seeing Brady on your side.
Well, they've talked about that all season.
Might do that too, but maybe not. It's Tom Brady, right? Like it's as much as I'm not going to say it just because he keeps saying it the whole time. I don't think I need to get
hashtag Mr. Super Bowl.
Experience resume is beyond the rest of the league combined.
Yeah.
So
literally,
I think it goes. I think it goes back to that quote of just someone reporting that one of the Bucs players was crying after the NFC Championship game, and Brady just says we're not done yet. So I think just him alone, right? I mean, it's going to be like Kyle said, that aura. I think that's going to obviously be enough just himself to carry most of this team if they are able to emerge victorious.
Yeah,
I would say I think Brady's the calming aura. I think Ian, you were saying about the Chiefs' sluggish start. Mahomes might be the energy spark that makes it so that doesn't happen, right? The rest of the players kind of see him. They get their legs, their spirit, their energy a little more. But Brady's the guy that kind of, when everything's going wrong in that game, the team's not going to fall apart and go into it with a negative attitude.
And to kind of to stay on that topic a little bit, when we're comparing Mahomes to Brady or relative to Brady's success and so on and so forth, we pick, we get nitpicky, we pick on little things that are issues for him, but in reality, again, when compared to the rest of the league, he's still superior to most. But so for me, those slow starts, sometimes Mahomes has been a part of that. And that's the biggest thing to me. Like, you cannot start slow against this team. You have the ability. I'm not saying it's impossible for them to come back. It would never happen. No, I just don't think you can bank on that. I said it earlier this week. It's not Jimmy Garoppolo on the other side. It's who is he, Miss Kyle? Hashtag what? Just say it. Just say it.
Mr. Giselle Brady?
Yeah, right. Mr. Super Bowl, I think is what you're trying to say, because hey.
Tom's such a boring name. Giselle's a way cooler name. And it's French, right?
Right.
I like it.
I think this all goes back to
just compare the quarterbacks to their aura. Like, what am I even trying to stop? Let you guys take over.
Well, look, we sit here, and unfortunately there had to be an odd man out, and Aaron Rodgers was that guy. And that again doesn't make him a bottom third quarterback. No, he's still one of, if not the best quarterback in the league. Again, it depends on who you ask. If you ask me, that's not what I'd say, but I'm still going to say he's, that top tier quarterback, of a very small group of 2 or 3 players, and 2 of them I think are in this game right now. But you're right though. There's that, and I think again, that quarterback advantage is always going to go towards Brady. I think this is the best quarterback matchup that we're ever going to have. Again, I think we've given our reasons to exhaustion. Recap, I mean, I don't think there's ever been a guy that has been widely considered the greatest of all time participating in a Super Bowl against someone of his ilk, or at least of his contemporary at the time, and that would be Patrick Mahomes, because right now they're, like I said, two of the three best quarterbacks in the league. We talked about Montana Elway. Montana wasn't the greatest of all time at the time. No one, I wasn't alive at the time, but I'm assuming people didn't consider him that at that very moment. Maybe after that, and subsequently the games after that fact, maybe that became true, but not at the time. So right now, I think, again,
I thought you were alive then.
Yeah, technically. I mean, I barely,
one or two.
Yeah, I was barely alive. Let's.
I wasn't alive. Yeah. I was almost alive.
It was close.
Yeah. Sorry.
No.
Sorry to date you.
It's the point is,
Mike was definitely alive.
Yeah,
ask Mike all about
Mike.
it tomorrow. You can ask Mike more about it tomorrow. Yeah. See, speaking, I should stop doing that.
It's okay. It's Super Bowl people over here. Kyle's over there. Actually, I just did it the opposite if you're watching on camera right now, but whatever. So, despite how great you think Mahomes is, I still think the quarterback matchup favors Tom Brady, because, again, there's a difference between experience and then just, I say it jokingly, but in reality, the term Mr. Super Bowl is very appropriate, because that's what he does. He goes to Super Bowls. He decides to go to the NFC, and you know what? We're going to go to the Super Bowl because I want to. And
so he's 10, right? Have you said that 10 times yet? Because I think that's your quota.
No,
if he goes next year, you can say it 11 times in a broadcast.
My quota is unlimited.
If Tom Brady,
I guess you are the boss. I can't really tell you anything.
Y'all could be in the Super Bowl.
I don't even know if this honestly is playing over the airways, but it was the Steve Harvey quote from a couple years ago, not last night, where he said if Tom Brady wasn't living, y'all could go to the Super Bowl, and it's true. And it's a joke, and it's kind of like that meme from The Big Bang Theory. It's funny because it's true. I mean, it is. It's funny because it's true. Tom Brady just goes to the Super Bowl. So I think there's so much value in that. It's not the be-all, end-all, because, again, there are other factors in this game, and especially when you have a guy that, can, at the very least, negate some of that Super Bowl experience because of his own Super Bowl experience. I think that's what makes for this great matchup overall. Yeah,
and just kind of like you said earlier in the week, I mean, when he beat Russell Wilson, the Seahawks haven't been back since. You guys talked about the Rams losing 2001, and that was kind of the end of the greatest show on turf. So it's kind of like just the mixture of Brady, but just how hard it is to get back to the Super Bowl, like we said. That's just what makes Brady so good to me, is just because even on his own, I mean, he's obviously been part of some really good teams, but he can just will himself on his own, it seems like, to, bring anybody past the finish line.
Well, and he's also, again, maybe I can call him Mr. Dynasty Killer, or if they win today, maybe that's another nickname that he can have, because you mentioned the Rams already, you mentioned the Seahawks going for back-to-back titles, and now the Chiefs. I mean, if they lose all of a sudden, that's the third team that has their dynasty aspirations halted. At least, in the Chiefs' case, this may be temporary. We know with the previous teams it was permanent. So we'll see what happens in that sense. But
Kurt Warner didn't really last. He didn't last on the Rams much long after that. At least Wilson's still with the Seahawks.
Kyle Bolger, right? Am I completely? I think I'm mixing.
You got the first. Yeah. Right? That's all that matters.
Kyle Bowler. I think that's what I did. I mashed together two quarters. I might as well. Mark Bolger. Thank you. That's why I was having Mark.
Okay.
Mark with a C.
The other first name is better.
Not Mark with a K.
But just I'm surprised you wouldn't just call him Mr. Dynasty, because while he was also killing these dynasties, he was also maintaining his own, right? So why add the killer part? Just say Mr. Dynasty, because his dynasty prevented all these other ones from happening.
I want everyone every single season when the Super Bowl trophy, the Lombardi Trophy, is being awarded to think Super Bowl and to think Mr. Super Bowl, Mr. Tom Brady.
Well, at least Bob Gracie still has Mr. Perfect season. So
hey, look, I mean, if Tom can't have Tom Terrific, I'll settle on Mr. Super Bowl. So let's we're going to rank our best players in this game, and look, there's going to be probably some disagreement on this. I kind of ballparked about 8 or so players in this game, so we can kind of start with there. I didn't know how much time we wanted to spend on it or how much time we would have. What do you guys think? How many players do you think you can rank right now?
I actually thought, you said 5 to 7, and cutting down from 8 to 7 was incredibly difficult. So I'd be fine with
perfect.
8. I think that's there's a good delineation there. I think it would probably be. I would think we probably might have the same 8 players, but how they're ranked might be interesting.
We'll go with 8. The number of Super Bowls Tom will be going for next season. I
guess that'll be a great rematch, won't it?
Maybe it will be. I think we talked about Look. I mean, I think the Bucks. Look, that's a discussion for post. Maybe after this game we can talk about this. But Kyle, I'll give you the floor. Let's do this. I want you to go through your list instead of us going one by one. Let's just go through your list. I'll go through my list. Braden will go through his, and we'll just do that. So, give us your list. Maybe give us a little reasoning for each, and we'll do that.
Well, maybe I'll just start with the reasoning in general, like the global reason that kind of led me to rank them. It's basically on the message you said.
By the way, sending.
8 to 1. Yeah. You basically said the best players, right? Not most impactful. I think the same 8 players would be there, but I think the order would change. So I'm looking at really just the quality of that player, how good they are at their position relative to the rest of the league is kind of my general gauge, which basically made it so the top 4 were pretty obvious, and then the bottom 5, I guess, or the bottom 6, a little bit difficult. But anyway, I'm going to start with Chris Jones at 8. I think, anytime you can be an NFL record holder for a good reason. I mean, you don't want to be like the guy with the most interceptions thrown or something. That's a bad record to have. But consecutive games the sack. I mean, this guy from an interior line perspective is one of the best pass rushers in the league. I mean, you see, Kenny Clark at the Packers. Obviously, Aaron Donald is the gold standard, and no one's really going to touch him. But outside of that, who's the best interior rusher? It used to be J.J. Watt. Obviously now it's Donald, but after that, Jones might be right up there. So he definitely, I think, belongs in the category of best interior defensive lineman in the game. And keeping on that, I think maybe one of the best linebackers in the game, Devin White. I think to me, you could maybe flip flop those two, even have White at 8, Jones at 7. I'll take it either way, but I mean, White fills all the roles of a linebacker. He'll even blitz at times, but certainly great run stuffer and a great guy in coverage. Super key. It's going to be really key this week, I think, especially against a certain other player this week. I mean, today it's in a few hours.
It feels like a week from now. Let's just say it. It feels like a week from now.
No. Still at what, like 6.5 hours? That's way too long.
I got so much stuff to do between now and then. It's gonna feel like we did the show a while ago.
So trying to 5 and 6, I think, was tricky as well. But I went Mike Evans at 6. He's one of the best receivers in the league. 1,000 yards every year. He doesn't do it by accident. And you look at the quarterbacks he had. Yeah. That's really not an accident. That's him. He's just an incredible receiver. Good combination of strong hands, good contested catchability, but also good enough ability to separate, get open at different levels. I know they tend not to run him too much after the catch. That's maybe his only limitation. So he's a good deep downfield receiver who's also great in the red zone. It's such a great skill to have. Truly, I mean, Brady had Randy Moss, but really with that level of receiver, I know Wes Welker and Julian Edelman are amazing, but Mike Evans is something else. He's probably the second best receiver that Brady's ever thrown to. So this might be a game where I think Brady really relies on it, and it might come through. Number 5, and this is where I think all those guys I brought up to this point are all among the best at their position. You'd probably say maybe top 5 for all of them. And there's quite a lot of good wide receivers. Maybe Evans, even that's a little tricky there. But I think Shaq Barrett's no different, but he probably poses the most impact on this game. So I think we've already talked about it for obvious reasons. So to me, the top 4, these 4 players are either 1 or 2 at their position in my mind. So number 4, I've got Travis Kelce. I think just because I think George Kittle's well-rounded game, I think that's a good opinion we mostly share at Full Press Coverage. I don't know if Braden will contradict that, but Kittle is the best tight end in the league. He replaced Gronk as that do-it-all tight end. So impactful in the run game, so impactful in the pass game. Kelsey, he's not a horrible blocker. He's not Jimmy Graham. Like this is a very useful tight end as a tight end, not just as a receiver. But his mark on the game is catching the ball. It is like Evans. I think Kelsey is so key to this offense. That's why I have him a little higher. Number 3, I've got Tyrann Mathieu. I think he's the best defensive back in the game. I think honestly, maybe it's Packers bias again, the way Jair Alexander played as a corner this year, I think he's become the best one-on-one cover corner. Maybe if Stephon Gilmore rebounds next year, that discussion reopens again. I think Jair Alexander really proved something this year. And if I had to choose between the two, I'd probably still choose Tyrann Mathieu because he impacts not just one player, but the whole field, and his ball hawking ability, his range of motion to get tackles and impact on every play, no matter where he's lined up. He can blitz really well. Just the impacts there. I believe he led all safeties in alt pro votes. So the NFL players think he's the best safety in the league. I think you guys can all maybe answer that when you're ranking him, assuming he's on your list. But because of that, I think you might be able to make the argument best defensive back in the league. So I think number 3. And then the 2 quarterbacks, and I'm not going to reveal who I have at 1 or 2. I'll let you guys talk about that. I'll let the impact.
I'll go next, I guess. And look, I'll admit, I forgot about Tyrann Mathieu, and I think this kind of speaks to just the amount of talent that's going to be on the field today. Because I'm sitting here going through all my things, and I'm like, man, I really want to put Antoine Winfield Jr. in this list. I think he's that good. And here I am just completely forgetting about Tyrann Mathieu. So I'm going to add my 9th one, just because I didn't originally put him on my list, and I don't want to sit here and juggle it up right now. I'll put Mathieu and Winfield Jr. because I think both are incredibly good at what they do and can have a bigger impact. But for me, it's going to break down like this. Number 8 for me, Mike Evans. You kind of said a lot of what I wanted to say. One of the big things about him is he's a red zone threat. And that's something that outside of maybe Rob Gronkowski, Tom really hasn't had one. I mean, Julian Edelman's great. Danny Amendola was great. All these guys that have come and gone, Wes Welker, none of them were touchdown catchers. They weren't red zone guys. So Randy Moss was an all-zone guy. I mean, you could throw the ball to him anywhere on the field, and he would catch it and could turn it into a touchdown. Mike Evans, although not quite to that level, I think, of playmaking ability, certainly after having the ball in his hands, because, again, you watch Randy Moss, the guy, takes 3 strides, and he's 30 yards ahead of you. But he is so big in that red zone that he's going to have an impact opposite Gronkowski too. So you have Gronkowski, you have Mike Evans at the same time, and even Chris Godwin's a nice red zone threat. But I put Mike Evans number 8. Number 7 to me, you kind of again summed it up quite a bit. Shaq Barrett. Of all those guys on the list, I love Vita Vea, I love JPP, and Ndamukong Suh. I don't even think we've even said his name yet. Shaq Barrett is a guy who can. He can, when he's on, he can just wreak havoc. He can obviously sack the quarterback. He didn't have as many as he did a year ago, but he and JPP combined for 5 sacks against Aaron Rodgers last week or in the NFC Championship game. That could be another issue because it's not about just having one tackle out and the Chiefs' ability to withstand that. It's about having both tackles out now. And how do you now combat that when you have 2 guys that you can argue are very elite on those edges. So,
and Turner and Wagner are starters in the NFL. I know Wagner's been the backup swing tackle for the Packers this year, but he was a right tackle starting for a long time. So, and they played really well against the Rams. It's not just Aaron Donald. The Packers interior handled Donald so well, but they had good edge rushers, and they were perfect. This is a next level defensive line. And specifically those 2.
And again, when you're talking about this game with so much talent abound, from both teams, and Shaq Barrett being right up there in my opinion, and obviously Kyle's as well in that mix. Number 6 for me, Chris Jones. Again, Kyle kind of wrapped it up very nicely. That's why I kind of had him go first. He did a lot of the talking for me, which was kind of nice, and I appreciate that. Number 5 for me, Tyreek Hill. A lot of people aren't going to immediately throw him at the top of any sort of wide receiver list when you come to ranking. I mean, more so maybe now than maybe at the beginning of the season. But he's fast. He can run great routes, and he knows how to get open. And to me, that has all the markings of a great wide receiver, and we've seen it so far. And perhaps part of the importance factor has trickled into my list as well. And here's a guy that you didn't mention, Kyle, though. My number 4, Tristan Wirfs. One of the best. You can argue. I know he didn't win Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, and very rarely do linemen do. But this guy, of the 4 major tackles heading into this draft, this guy was the best. He's played at an elite level. Now, you can sit here and say, playing in front of Tom Brady helps, and it absolutely does, but you just don't get on a football field, and because the quarterback's great, you know how to block elite rushers. Well, Tristan Wirfs did that. He's been from the beginning to the end of the season very consistent, and I think not only from an impact level, but just I think he's the best offensive lineman in this game. I mean, especially with who's out for Kansas City. So Tristan Wirfs, number 4 for me. Number 3, Travis Kelce. We kind of talked about who we think is going to have the biggest impact outside of the quarterbacks in this game, and to me it's Travis Kelce. And again, for all the reasons Kyle said, he's certainly not Jimmy Graham. I see him more as kind of a beefier Aaron Hernandez, and I know people don't like to say that name, but think about it. I mean, Travis Kelce can run. He can line up, catch short passes. He can run routes, and he's more of that athletic pass catching tight end, similar to Aaron Hernandez. Now, towards the end of Aaron Hernandez's career, he was lining up as a halfback and doing all these crazy different things. Can Kelce do that? I don't know if you want him to, but something tells me if you need him to do something unique, he's going to be able to do that. So for me, Travis Kelce, number 3. Number two, Patrick Mahomes. Come on. Did you really think I wasn't going to rank Mr. Super Bowl number 1? Look, this is no disrespect to Patrick Mahomes. I think, again, best young quarterback in this game. I'm going to live and die, and the fact that he's in the Super Bowl isn't going to have me back down anytime soon. I'm going to live and die by the fact that I still believe that Tom Brady is the best quarterback in the game, and it's not just about the raw numbers. There's so much more to it, and I think him being in the Super Bowl kind of proves that. On top of the raw numbers as well, because let's not forget he was right up there too. But look, like you said, Kyle, you can flip a coin. It's about preference. To me, I think how do you not put Mr. Super Bowl number 1? So by default, Patrick Mahomes has to land at number 2, but it just kind of speaks about what this entire game is about. And really, it's about 2 teams, but ultimately it's about 2 quarterbacks. And right back to the original theme of this discussion, perhaps the best quarterback matchup in Super Bowl history.
I gotta say, I'm really happy you waited till the day of the Super Bowl before this, just incessant Mr. Super Bowl the whole time. Because if all the podcasts we did together this week, if that was going on, I might not have showed up this morning.
I was doing that on FPC Radio Live this week and the previous week. I wish I would have done it more.
Thanks for not doing that Friday when I was on there.
To be honest with you, I'm pushing this.
No, it's no, it's fine. Hey, it's the Super Bowl, right? So if you're gonna do it, you just do it the whole time. Today is the day to do it. So I'll endure.
Tom Brady Invitational. I started using the championship game like that, but
when he retires, you can call it the Tom Brady Memorial.
Well, if he ever retires.
That's true. So it's invitational for now, memorial in 15 years.
Braden, do you have Tom Brady number 1? Or no? Actually, you know what? Don't give it away yet. I want to hear you say it in a couple minutes. Let us know who number 8 through 2 is first.
Okay, so yeah, like you guys said, I mean, there's a lot of talent in this game, so I do feel bad for leaving some guys off, like Tyreek Hill. But my number 8 is actually going to be Devin White, just because I think he's the best coverage linebacker in this game. And when you talk about importance for this Super Bowl, probably going up against Kelce, I think I envision that happening a lot. He just stays with receivers so well down the field for a linebacker and doesn't commit a lot of penalties, has a good nose for the football. So Number 8 for me is Devin White. Number 7, I had to go with both Bucks receivers on my list, so it's tough to really decipher who I think is better. I'm going to put Mike Evans first at 7. You kind of touched on his downfield ability, and obviously started his career off with some really, really bad Tampa Bay Bucks teams. So he's been rewarded with a big contract before. And I think people, more casual NFL fans are starting to realize just how good of a player he is now that Brady's there. Number 6, I'll go the other receiver with Chris Godwin, just because for me personally in this game, I think he's able to do a lot more as far as where he lines up in the formation, how he could affect how the Chiefs attempt to cover, whether it's, with the zone blitz and where Tyrann Mathieu placed out on the field, how they try to rotate their defensive backs on certain plays. So I think just having him be able to do a lot more than Evans bumps him up the list just ahead for me at number 6. Number 5 is Chris Jones, just because I think the main thing is with Tom Brady and getting pressure on him, right? You got to be aware of his pocket awareness and an ability to evade pressure. And I think when you have an interior guy like Jones, not allowing Brady to step up into the pocket and really have a chance to, launch it down the field with even more force and velocity, that's going to be something that's going to be key in this game for the Chiefs pass rush. So Chris Jones at 5, just because he's in the interior there. Number 4 is Tyrann Mathieu. I wanted to put him ahead of Travis Kelce, but I think Kelce's just that important for this dynamic offense. But yeah, you touched on it earlier. Kind of a positionless player, and I think you look at even some plays like the Browns playoff game, he got knocked down on a couple of blocks, but he was still able to set the edge on some run plays, keep the backfield bottled up, and obviously his instincts. I think that's something for a defensive back, being able to create those havoc plays and turnovers. That's what you want out of defensive back. So Tyrann Mathieu, number 4, Travis Kelce, 3 for me. And you guys may be shocked by this. I'm going to put Mahomes at 2 and Brady at 1, just because as much as I like Patrick, obviously, we know for me, it's just, I think it's just the last few years really understanding Brady and his accomplishments. And I think just the fact that he's not the most physically gifted guy, of course. But I think just you talked about him being home alone 12 straight days. I think just his love for the game, his understanding of defenses for me. I know Mahomes is obviously able to decipher that well right now, but he's still kind of growing as far as reading defenses go. And I think that just the fact he's been doing it longer, and you talked about, no one's been able to make the Super Bowl 10 times or win it 6 times. So for me, even though I am the Chiefs guy, I think Tom Brady for me has to go number.
You froze for just a second, and I thought it was just the world coming to an end. Because no, look, I kind of really wish I had a
not before the game.
No. I kind of wish I had a Emperor Palpatine soundbite there to say good. But no, look, I mean, look, this is no disrespect to Patrick Mahomes. He'd be at the top of this list pretty much against every other opponent. We're just talking about a guy who, again, is going to his 10th, which is twice as many as the next closest guy, and that's John Elway, who got into that conversation when we were talking about some of these, great Super Bowl matchups, the other day. And, so look, I guess it now comes down to Kyle. Who did you put number 1? Because you kind of weaseled out of this question here.
Yeah, I did. I actually thought it'd be more dramatic and like at the end, okay, who's me making a difference? I just want to make myself more important. I think so. Ian, you talked about the fact that Mahomes, the toe's not 100%. That Bills game, though, it looked close to it. And if it didn't look like it affected him at all, and if that's going to be the case today, then I do have Mahomes at 1. I think at this point, it's no doubt in my mind who was the better quarterback during the championship weekend. I thought it was Mahomes. Great Bills secondary, and he was just carving it up. Brady carving up the Packers
for a half.
awful pieces of secondary. Again, kudos to Brady. That's what you have to do, is to target Kevin King because he can't cover deep. Oh, look at that, he's covering deep 1-on-1. No safety health. That's the perfect play to go to him. But I don't think I've seen any quarterback target Jair Alexander as much as Brady did, and it never worked out, regardless of, did Evans drop it, and, he could have done better. Brady had 0 receptions on like 6 targets against Alexander and all 3 interceptions.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, he almost should have done better and kept going after King and Sullivan. So I think he wasn't perfect, but Mahomes was. So that's recency bias, right? It's got to be the most recent game, but it'd be just the fact that Mahomes looked so unaffected by the toe. I think he adds this whole other aspect that forces the Buccaneers defense to really cover the entire the cover field, not just with the receivers, but Mahomes' ability to run. I mean, how limited is that? He had 1 rush attempt, I think?
Well, I think it was like 1 was his average. I think it was like 5 for 5 yards.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So it didn't really impact it that much, but anyway, it just seemed like he wasn't, the accuracy was there. So I'm going to go Mahomes, but it is come down. If the toe wasn't perfect, I probably would make that the difference.
Yeah, and I think that's something that could happen in the game that could affect him because of you combine it with the physicality and the aggressiveness of the Bucs defense. Now, when they played in the first quarter of week 1, the Bucs decided to go man up and try to blitz the hell out of him. Well, that didn't work, and I hope to every thing out there that they don't do that to start the game this game, because again, they have the ability not to do that and still be successful. You got to get the pressure with just those guys, and they're certainly capable of doing that, and that's the key to both. I mean, this
right?
Is
like that's
exactly
that's always been the secret to beating Brady is rushing 4, but it's the same thing with Mahomes. It's for a different reason almost because of his running ability that you can't commit that much.
With Brady
and leave something uncontained. With Brady, it's just because he'll pick apart the secondary as soon as he sees someone open.
With Brady, you need to take up that lane up the middle. Because the most dangerous thing Brady can do is not only manipulate the coverage with his eyes, but it's the step up, it's the step to the left, it's the drop of the shoulder, it's these little things that make him an incredibly mobile quarterback inside that pocket. But if he can't step up and keep his eyes downfield and read the defense, that's where it becomes a problem. With Mahomes, it's the opposite. You want to keep him inside because where things start to break down is when he can get outside, and then all of a sudden, as great as your cornerbacks or safeties can be, you're not going to keep up with Tyreek Hill. You're not going to keep up with Mecole Hardman. You're not going to keep up with Travis Kelce for an extended period of time. So, and again, with Mahomes, what makes him so great is that if he does run out, he's not limited to just that side of the field. Like, the defense could shift over, roll out, and Tyreek Hill could just sit there on the opposite side of the field, waving his hand, and the ball will get over to him. So that's the biggest difference. So the philosophy is the same. The strategy is the same. You have to get pressure without blitzing. You just have to do it different ways with these two quarterbacks. And it kind of speaks to what they're great at and what makes them so great. So,
it's funny because this game, greatest quarterback matchup ever. But we've talked about how these are almost 2 all-star teams, really. Yeah. I mean, think about all the great players we've talked about. What about the players that no one even mentioned as part of their top 8 or top 9?
Brown?
Like Frank Clark's name wasn't said. Antonio
Chris
Brown.
Godwin.
No one said Gronk.
Yeah.
I know, Ian, you said Tristan Wirf's probably the best offensive lineman in the game. I think I'd agree, but it's tough because they're like Ali Marpet as a guard, like the guy right next to that right side is so. Right, Market's on the right side.
Brian Jensen too at center. I mean, he's a mean mother effer, and that says a lot when you're a lineman. You're supposed to be nasty. You're supposed to get in people. And guess what? He'll mix it up. Now, again, there's always risk that he will take it too far. And there was a game against the Bears earlier this season where, I mean, from top to bottom, the discipline was horrible. But they've done a complete 180 in the second half of the season. So I tend to think, let him do what he does because I think he's going to know what the limit is. So.
And if I remember, that was a Thursday night game, right? So short week, early enough in the season where the team was still kind of gelling. So I think that throwing in that early Thursday night game, it kind of skews things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Too. So and again, that was the game where they committed 6 consecutive offensive penalties, and I think 5 of them were pre-snap between false starts and then I think there was a unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. I think on Ryan Jensen. That was that created the big hubbub for a week about Tom Brady yelling at his teammates and how all these old hats came out and said how disrespectful it was, and then next thing you know, him and Ryan Jensen are
it's all the quarterbacks. So I mean, Rivers has been doing that. That was Rivers' game for how many years? and he does not have cachet to yell at teammates like Tom Brady does.
And that's
let's
the
be
thing.
honest.
The reality of it is Ryan Jensen would be the first one to sit there and say, "Yeah, I deserve that. I didn't take." He was like, "I didn't take any offense to that. I mean, I committed a stupid penalty." And Tom, that's why Tom Brady is great, because he's not going to let you get away with that. And then guess what? But
Psychopath, right? That's why we love him so much as a quarterback.
Well, think about it. Now it's like that was in what, week 5, week 6. We're in the Super Bowl, and I said, look, they started out the first part of the season as potentially committing a historical number of penalties. And at the end of the year, they finished middle of the pack, right next to the Packers, right below the Chiefs in total penalties accepted against them. So, which is incredible considering, some of the games they had. I think at one point, 15 penalties called against them in one game, which is absurd.
I mean, the Packers, they had one game without penalties this year. It was the Titans, I believe, and there's a few other games where they were only committing 2 or 3 penalties. It's also good on the other side that the Packers had so many games where there's a couple where the penalties piled up, but not really. So for them to catch up to a team that is pretty disciplined is quite remarkable.
Well, guys, between this entire week and this last hour and 10 minutes or so, we've just talked to our heart's content. I think we said everything. I think we've kind of predicted everything, but I'm going to ask you for a winner, and I'm going to ask you for a score, because we got to put this out there. And of course, you can check it all out at Tally Site, our friends over there. And folks, if you like hockey, and I know Braden's a hockey guy. We're all hockey guys, because you're Canadian. So of course you're born as a hockey guy. We're all hockey. We can pick hockey games now, folks. But right now we're picking the Super Bowl, and you can check it out on Tally Site when we publish that a little bit later before the game. But get it here right now. I'm gonna go first. Obviously, Mr. Super Bowl and the Tampa Bay Bucks will win this game. It's going to be 34-28. And if you say, wow, that sounds familiar, well, you know why that's familiar? That's the same score that the Patriots and Tom Brady beat the Atlanta Falcons. And it's not so much about duplicating that score, but to me that kind of feels like what kind of game we're going to get. We're going to get 2 offenses that are going to produce, but 2 really good defenses that eventually one of them's going to make a play, whether that's sacking the quarterback, a turnover, or just a crucial stop on 3rd down when you need it the most. And that's where we're going to end up, with 34-28. And guess what?
Yeah. Chiefs 28. I like that. I have that same score too, actually. Chiefs 28. Bucks 26, though. I think neither team gets to 30. I think these defenses will, as great as we're making this quarterback shootout to be, this isn't going to be quite Bradshaw Staubach, where they're both over 30 and they're going blow for blow into the 4th. I mean, it'll probably be that too, where it's maybe start off a little slow. Most of these points are probably going to get scored in the second half, specifically 4th quarter, just because both those quarterbacks have that. Oh yeah, now is the time to shine. Now it's the time. Oh no, I can see that where the last 4 possessions are all touchdowns or something. But so I have a 28-26.
I will say this real quick, Braden. The Bucks have scored over 30 in every playoff game against 3 top 10 pass defenses. So say what you will. They are putting up points, and they've been doing that for a while too, not just the playoff games.
Oh yeah, I forgot the Saints were a top 10 pass defense. I don't know, for some reason I don't think they are, but yeah.
Yeah, I got 38-31, and it's kind of weird because even though I think there'll be that much points, I just think there's going to be a lot of quick scoring drives. I think the defenses will actually have a few more stops than you would think for me saying that score, but I got 38-31 Chiefs, and if we're throwing an MVP out there, maybe kind of surprising with that amount of points that it is in the quarterback. But I think Travis Kelce's going to have a couple touchdowns in this game. I just think, you look at the volume that he's getting over the playoffs. I think he's going to continue to do that. So I got Travis Kelce as my MVP if you wanted that as well.
Who do you have, Kyle? Who's your MVP?
Again, assuming non-quarterback?
No. I mean, take into account how you think it would legitimately be voted. So quarterbacks, obviously, yeah.
Mahomes.
Yeah.
I'm
going to go with Brady because, again, assuming there's a combined score of over 60 points and the Bucks ultimately score out, assuming there's not a pair of pick sixes, I'm going to assume that Tom Brady had a great game. And despite – and look, we saw it in Super Bowl 51. James White had an incredible game. Yeah. Tom Brady was the MVP, and deservedly so. I'm not saying he didn't deserve it, but ultimately the receiver has to, get fed that ball. And who does that? Well, it's the quarterback. So naturally he's going to have an edge. So to me, Tom Brady's going to be the MVP. His fifth Super Bowl MVP for Mr. Super Bowl himself. Maybe name one of his kids Mr. Super Bowl MVP or something like that. I don't know.
And just for reference sake, I was trying, you look back, okay, so for Kelsey to win, right, it would have to be shatter the all-time records of tight ends, right? And right now I think it's Gronk the year after, unfortunately, Ian. Well, actually, no, you talked enough about Packers losses this week. So when the Patriots lost in the Super Bowl to the Eagles, Nick Foles, by the way, at quarterback, that's crazy. Gronk had 9 catches for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. If Kelsey has to beat that to get, if he can go 10 catches, 150. Then I think that's some serious case for that MVP.
And conversely, Tyreek Hill would have to have a pedestrian game, I think. That, you know what I mean?
Yeah, true. Yeah, you're right.
Because again, because if it's just Kelsey producing on an offense that generally produces quite a bit, and he's the guy, I think that's where his best case comes from. Because again, if Tyreek Hill's producing, then you got to assume that Mahomes is racking up the numbers. And there's just a certain point, we saw it last year. Look, you can sit there and say that he, you can make a really good argument that he probably shouldn't have won the MVP, but given the circumstances and how the game ended, you figure that's how they're going to vote. So to me, if either of these quarterbacks have approach 300-ish yards and 3 touchdowns, whoever wins that game, that the quarterback's going to win it. So, all right, folks. That's it. We still, remarkably, we still have 5 hours before the game. Yeah, just about 5 hours on the dot until the game. You have enough time to go out, read a book, get some lunch, go back and listen to all the great work that both of these two have put in leading up to this game and throughout this entire season, and of course all the great work over at fullpresscoverage.com. Be sure to follow at fullpressNFL, because in a little bit we will tweet out a thread of all of our Super Bowl coverage leading up to this game, and of course the stuff we published in the last couple of days. So be able to check that out, read it up, and read it over and over and over again until the start of the game. We would appreciate that. And of course, follow us all on Twitter. I am at IGLEN31. Kyle, where can they find you?
So a few things to plug. So a couple podcasts. You already mentioned the Full Press Packers pod. Everything for Full Press Coverage Packers at FPC_Packers. Full Press Fantasy Pod as well at FPC_Fantasy Pod. My personal account, Senra Says. If you liked all the things I said, and I did say a lot today, so thanks, Ian, for that opportunity as always. Thanks, Braden. Always enjoy talking with you.
And especially if you like Canada, folks, give him a follow. He's good. Canada and curling, by the way. Braden, where can they find you?
You guys can follow me at Braden Holochek 9 with the number 9 at the end. And after Super Bowl coverage, it doesn't stop as we get into the off season. If you've been following me the last couple of years, big NFL draft fan. So I've already cranked out a few Chiefs prospect profiles, so more of those should be coming this week, along with some final thoughts on the big game. And I'm going to be starting a new series as well, Tuesdays and Thursdays, this or that, just kind of throwing some hypotheticals out there for the Chiefs. If you put the Super Bowl team out there right now, which running back would you rather have, Priest Holmes or Jamal Charles, or a coach Marty Schottenheimer or Dick Vermeil? So I'm going to be kind of having some fun with that this offseason to kind of keep viewers interested while there isn't games happening. So again, thank you guys for just great season, and hopefully the game tonight is as fun as we're hoping it will be.
Charles versus Holmes, you got my interest. I want to read that.
Well, we're going to keep going here for another couple hours just discussing that. No, and I'm certainly looking forward to the How Did the Chiefs Rebound After Losing the Super Bowl article coming this week. No, I'm kidding. We've enjoyed doing this each and every Sunday. We will obviously be having a ton of content, not only here on some of our new platforms and on YouTube and Twitter and Twitch, but of course, throughout the offseason, we're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff. So be sure to check out fullpresscoverage.com, fullpresshockey.com, fullpressradio.com, and of course, download the app. It's free and it's available on Apple and Google Play stores. Folks, have a great day. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Be safe. And if you do celebrate later, Bucks or Chiefs fans, do it safely. And remember, I don't know. I got nothing else to say. Go, go Bucks. Go Tom Brady. 34-28. That's the final score.